So today I'm taking a good opportunity. This is a good opportunity to visit you, my fellow Dhamma practitioners, and particularly that means Venerable Ajahn Dhamma, who practiced together with me in the old days in Wat Nong Papong. He too is a disciple, a direct disciple of Ajahn Chah, and I also share Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Chah is also my Upajjhaya, so we have the same Ajahn together. And today I've been invited to speak and share Dhamma with the community, to speak with the monks, the novices, the bhikkhus, and the lay people. All of you have made a firm determination to practice, and you have enough faith to go forth in this Buddha's dispensation. Although you're all from different places, and you have many different reasons for coming to ordain, in a sense this is a test of your faith. How much faith do you have? And do you have enough faith to carry on this path? So we've had enough now to go forth, to leave the home life, but now we're seeking that true peace of mind. In the past, when we were living in the world, there were many things, objects, material objects, which we used to find our happiness. But the mind was never really very peaceful. The Dhamma Vinaya, this Buddhist teaching, this is a way to find true peace. And that true peace is the ultimate happiness of mind. Luang Por Chah sought this. He made a determination to realize Maggaphala, Nibbana, and he studied with teachers like Luang Por Man in the Isan, the northeast of Thailand. He struggled and persevered with all obstacles. Ajahn Chah taught us, and he explained very clearly that for him to realize the Dhamma was no easy thing. There were many obstacles in his practice, particularly things like fear, which came up when living in charnel grounds and cemeteries and fearful places. And so he taught us this. And different people, when they heard this, could see the value then of his teachings in different ways. I myself was moved to tears when I heard about his struggle and learnt about what he went through, and I would experience great joy thinking about it. This is the real peace, the real happiness that he was teaching. He laid out very clearly the path of practice that the Kruba Ajahns had all taught before him. We have what's called the Korwat, the ways of practicing, the routine, the discipline. This includes things like morning and evening chanting, emphasizing harmony of the Sangha. What this means is that we have to give up our own desires and put them aside in order to carry out and emphasize the communal activities. We put aside our own personal activities and develop respect for one another. Particularly here, Ajahn Dhamma is the senior monk. He's the leader of the Sangha, so we have to respect him. And he has many other monks who are his helpers, who are assisting him. When we first come, there are some things which we like and some things which we don't like. But we have to bear in mind that we all play a role in this community. If we all develop respect for the Sangha, this is what leads to growth. See, we all have different views and opinions. All the monks, the novices, the bhikkhus, and the lay people, we all come into this with opinions. But are they true? Are they accurate? So without that respect for the Korwat and the routine in the monastery, we'll always just tend to believe our own views. The Kruba Ajahns have experienced this, and they learned how to go against their own defilements by developing sila, samadhi and panya. What this does is abandon selfishness, develops humility, develops respect. So we put down our own views and we listen to the Kruba Ajahns. Sometimes there are things which we perhaps don't understand or don't agree with right now, but in time we often learn to realize that they're true. When we train in the Kowat, or the procedures, the practices, the routine here, this is a basis which leads to us, leads to the arising of right view. And this develops a state of mind which is malleable, which is ready to yield and accept instruction. Our mind, when we really begin to practice, we see that we can really use this to make the mind peaceful. The real skillful means, the upaya, is what we call the kammatthana, and that's what the upajjhaya gives us when we ordain as novices. Kesa, loma, nakha, danta, tacho. Hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth and skin, and we contemplate this and recite it in forward and reverse order, anuloma, patiloma. Ajahn would always emphasize this when he gave ordination. He would say that it's a very special time when sons of families, young men go forth from the household life and ordain with him, and he would emphasize this teaching a lot, asubha kammatthana and kaya katasthiti, contemplation of the body, in such a way that he made the ordination ceremonies not just a hollow ceremony or just a hollow ritual. This is called developing samatha, using these 5 kammatthanas, or the 5 bases of practice. You contemplate the body, the external body, in the state of asubha, of unattractiveness. You contemplate the external body and you see that it's covering an internal body, the organs inside, and all of it is patikula, it's repulsive or unattractive. As a result then, the mind just simply becomes peaceful. It abandons the sense of desire and delighting in one's own body or the body of other people's. Peace arises. Another good contemplation is maranasati, death contemplation. Again, this is samatha, this is calming the mind in a way where the mind no longer, when the mind is no longer busy or stressed out or confused. When you think of death, then immediately your problems are lessened. Asubha kammatthana then and maranasati, death contemplation, both lead to peace of mind. We also have anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. All of these are skillful means which lead the mind, incline the mind to states of peace. But when we first come to ordain and begin to practice, our minds aren't used to being peaceful. We've rarely been fully in the present moment, and we've usually lived our lives following our moods and desires. So this is a real task which faces us, is to practice to keep our mind firmly in the present moment. Whether we're sitting or walking, we have to keep our mind in the present moment. When you're walking, you can pick up the kammatthana, kesa, loma, nakha, danta, tacho, or bones, atti, 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 or Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Whatever you find works for you in order to make the mind peaceful and inclined towards samadhi. What happens is the proliferation, the prumpang, will slowly decrease and fade away. And for some people it's good to actually use proliferation and thinking. If you're of the nature to think a lot and speculate and proliferate, then you can actually use your thinking process in a skillful way, in a way which calms your mind down. You can contemplate, you can think, having born, we all must die, and think, well, what does that mean to you? What would it be like when you die? What's this body like when it dies, or one day, or 2 days after death? After a day it's bloated and swelling and begins to rot and decay, it has worms. After 2 or 3 days it deteriorates. After a while you can see the bones. So these are contemplations we can bring to mind, things we've studied. So you can contemplate or proliferate using asubha as your base. This is called using sanya, or memories and perceptions, things that you've seen, images that you see or reflections that you bring to mind. At first, it's probably the case that limiters or mental images of the body won't appear. You're just using your memories and perceptions, bringing these up as thoughts. But this definitely reduces the delighting and infatuation in the body, and the mind becomes peaceful and light. So when you practice contemplating like this for a long, long time, peace eventually becomes greater and more stable, and in time it's possible that limiters, visual images of the body will arise. So you practice this sitting and walking. Rinpoche would always say, when somebody really practiced like this, that was a real practitioner. And you practice evenly, and when you do so over a long time, that real aspiration that we've made, that is for true peace of mind, it must come in time. We have to be restrained when we're eating. Whatever we like, whatever we find delighting in, we have to abandon that. Those things that we don't particularly like, we have to take those on, eat those things in order to go beyond delighting in taste. We have the Dhutonga practices of eating, just everything mixed together in one vessel. Or perhaps you take on the Tudong practice of eating only your alms food. These are all practices which go against defilement. When you eat very little, the mind becomes peaceful. You contemplate food as merely elements, empty, or in their aspect of repulsiveness. When you begin to know this, you begin to understand practice. Rinpoche stressed that when you really understand food, you understand the rest of practice. This is because this body and mind comes together, arises, supported by material food. There's a teaching called the Apannaka Patipata, the incontrovertible teaching, or the practice which is always correct. And these are moderation in eating, moderation in resting and sleep, and the sense restraint. Sense restraint means understanding the 6 sense bases. We have eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind. And externally there are sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches. What does it feel like when these two come into contact with one another? Is there delighting and pleasure, or is there aversion? What exactly happens? So we learn to understand this, and we always come back to Asubha Kammatthana, seeing the body as unattractive, the 10 states of corpse decomposition, or the 32 parts of the body. We have to contemplate it all. We have to try and keep this going throughout the day, during all activities, when we're on arms round, when we're doing our chores, when we're washing our robes. This is what we have to do, and slowly we'll develop and get more proficient in this. Everyone has doubts about practice when we first begin. We all want our practice to be quick and easy, and we speculate about the Dhamma. Rinpoche taught us to be in the present moment all the time. See the present moment as arising and passing away. The 5 nivarana, sensuality, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and doubt, these are the real obstacles to practice. And when the mind becomes peaceful, finally these 5 nivaranas, or 5 hindrances, will finally be abandoned. And then the mind is fresh and ready to turn to contemplation or develop vipassana. There are 2 aspects, or 2 ways or modes that we can practice, if you like. One is called wisdom developing samadhi, and the other is called samadhi developing wisdom. For the first case, if someone is of the nature to proliferate and speculate and think a lot, then taking up the kammatthana, say Buddho, Dhammo, Sangho, or Kesa, Loma, Nakha, Danta, Tacho, it won't work for us, because very soon the mind will get restless and won't be able to stay with such a simple object. So we have to find skillful means, our own ubaya, in order to contemplate, in order to lead the mind towards samadhi. At first, the samadhi that arises based on contemplation won't be very strong, because it's based on just perceptions and thoughts. but we will get a sense of well-being that arises from the peace of mind. The mind will be temporarily freed from that burden of speculation, and when we see this, that will incline us to practice in this way more and more often. That peace of mind will lead to a reduction of our nivaranas or hindrances. And so this is the first way, the basic way to practice for somebody who speculates a lot. We call this panya obrom samadhi, or wisdom develops samadhi. So when we train in this way, using wisdom to develop samadhi or panya obrom samadhi regularly, when the mind does realize a certain level of concentration or peace, then many of the doubts which we have and many of the problems will slowly fade away. And similarly, these questions about the various ways to practice and the techniques, all of these fade away and finally end. So it's because it's natural that when we start, we do have many doubts. We may think that perhaps if we were to live alone, this would be very beneficial because we wouldn't have to have so much contact with other people, and we'd be able to practice in exactly the way which is just right for us. And then when looking and seeing what community life is like, we see it's all very confusing and chaotic and not really conducive to peace. So we might really think what we have to do is seek some viveka or solitude. But often when we finally do that, we do live alone or we go on retreat, it's just not how we thought it would be. The mind doesn't attain to much peace. Because when we first come to practice, what we need and what we're developing is these tools. The vinaya is like a tool, the kowa is a tool. These are all the things which we need to use. Similarly, with these dutonga watas, the tudong practices, the ascetic practices, we have to use them in order to help us strive to attain that samadhi. If the mind is not peaceful, then the mind will always be going and moving, inclining towards the outside world. But if we really determine to develop using our wisdom and develop in samadhi, then in time our mindfulness, our concentration and the five balas, or the five powers, the faith, effort, mindfulness, wisdom, will arise. We may have doubts about our communal life, and we may think that it doesn't really lead to realization of nibbana, and we may think that the individual life is better. What we have to understand is that the communal gathering, let's say, gathering and being together in harmony externally, this leads to the internal gathering or the internal harmony. So external gathering, this means meetings, the communal activities, these kind of things. These are things which monks who are Ajahns, who are leaders of the Sangha, they could practice on their own, and they could easily set up a kowa of just individual practice, but they've decided to have a communal way of living and communal ways of practicing. This is the benefit. This is because it's beneficial to the younger members. They have the understanding that meeting and gathering externally leads to gathering internally, that's to say when the mind gathers. Sometimes there may be a period when we have the opportunity to practice individually, say for 15 days between appositors, and then we come together on the apposita. But if you've been doing that, then you have to be really honest and ask yourself, how has your practice really been during that retreat period? How much have you been really on retreat, or have you been finding people to chat to? Have you been sleeping a lot? Have you been eating a lot? So for some people, private practice can be beneficial, but for others, their indriyas or their spiritual faculties can weaken or go into decline. So we always have to come back to the community and use the community as a point of reference. There are some monks who are very developed, and it's all right for them. using this method of wisdom to develop samadhi, the nivaranas or the hindrances are slowly abandoned, and you can compare this to, say, water in a well which at first is stirred up, but then in time, when the impurities settle, it becomes clear. You can see the mind behaving in this way, growing gradually clearer, and you begin to understand how it works. So at first there's always a lot of brumthang, that means proliferation and speculation, and then there's lots of problems arise and questions and doubts. But if you really put forth effort in the core work and practicing in line with the general standards, in time it gets better. We walk, we sit, and we do these communal activities right the way through the afternoon. If chores are in the afternoon, we do that then, and then have a drink and have our bathe, and then do evening chanting. And when evening chanting's over, we carry on practicing alone or rest. And then there's morning chanting, bindabat, the meal. So it carries on like this. We have our daily routine, but all the time we're training in in restraint and guarding our sense faculties and being cautious in every aspect of life, not being heedless in any way. So we always have to ask ourselves, is our mind falling into delight and aversion? We're gradually training in sila, samadhi and panya. At first though, the panya will be weak because samadhi is weak. In time though, we really understand about the difference between conventional and absolute reality. We understand that the world we're living in is very much a conventional world, but really everything is simply bound up and subject to three characteristics: anicca, dukkha, and anatta. We see this slowly, and panya and vipassana though slowly grows. We abandon that attachment to ourself, and sometimes our mind can see this very clearly, and for many days we can be clearly seeing things as they really are, and greed, hatred and delusion we can feel is greatly lessened or even abandoned. So when we have these moments or these periods, our real wisdom and understanding in this practice will increase, our faith in this practice will increase, and wisdom and samadhi will gradually increase. So we'll see how it really does lead to good results. So for now, we do have to make very firm our efforts and be very resolute. So the last thing Ajahn was saying was that this understanding how the external gathering or harmony externally leads to internal harmony, this is the way to realize and attain peace of mind. But sometimes wisdom simply doesn't arise. We have more of a sense of self, more of a belief in the solidity of existence. There seems to be no samadhi present in the mind. When our mind, the internal sense bases, contact external sight, sound, smells, tastes, touches, we don't have enough mindfulness or wisdom to control ourselves, and as a result, clinging and craving, attachments arise, delighting and aversion. Often we become averse to other people and even averse towards ourselves. Luang Por Chah was very emphatic: this is not the right way to allow yourself to go. We have to develop metta. We have to view one another in the light that we're all living here together. We're all disciples of the Buddha, and in coming to ordain now, as if we have no mother, no father, we only have each other to look after us, and none of us want any suffering. So we have to understand and view each other in a similar way. So we develop metta. We can make a determination every day. Today I won't allow anger to arise in my mind. But perhaps sometimes, because we're all from different places and we have different backgrounds, there may be some problems and misunderstandings arising because of different temperaments. And some of us may have a lot of ditthimana, be very opinionated and hold firmly to our own views and opinions. And as a result, sila, samadhi and panya just doesn't arise. So So we also have to have khanti, or patient endurance. We have to endure each other and at the same time develop metta, or loving kindness for one another, as well as all the other Brahma Viharas. So when there's none of this delighting and aversion, then finally the mind will become peaceful. So whatever it is, whether you're developing metta, asubha kammatthana, kaya sati, marana sati, or anapanasati, whatever method, it must be a practice which leads to peace of mind. And when you have a certain amount of samadhi, you'll be able to see the body very clearly in the light of three characteristics. The wisdom arises slowly, and soon the Dhamma itself will become clear. But in the meantime, it takes a lot of patient endurance. Dhamma can't arise in the mind. The mind can't attain to the enlightenment and real insight, penetration into Dhamma very quickly. Imagine, compare it to when you're young, you go to school and you study for 10, 15, even more years in order to understand about the world. It's the same with Dhamma. It can't possibly become apparent very quickly. So it takes patient endurance, and we have to be determined to seek the peace of mind, to follow the Kawat Padibat, to respect the senior monks, and also to divide the responsibility and share the workload amongst ourselves. Luang Por Chah taught us, had a teaching where he'd say, we're all the abbot, we're all the Jawat. Here, of course, you have Ajahn Dhamma, who really is the Jawat and is the most senior monk, who takes most of the responsibility. But if all of us see ourselves as also the Jawat, then we share in his responsibility. If you study the Vinaya, you'll see many things clearly as well. It'll teach you to be one of few desires, one who's restrained and one who's humble, taking on the Tudong practices. These are very beneficial. And then when you go off and you live in, cremation grounds or charnel grounds, or alone in mountains or in dangerous places, this will bring on a heightened mindfulness, a heightened awareness, and this will lead to samadhi. Your mind will finally be able to separate itself out from those moods and those thoughts in the mind. When we go off alone, you then have to take those teachings that you've heard and really put them into practice. That effort in practice leads to an arising of faith, which in turn leads to more effort. The mind will be firm, and that itself leads to more effort and more mindfulness. And we're able to struggle and endure unwholesome mental states. We'll see very clearly these insights into the Dhamma, that we all must die. And if that's the case, how can there be any kind of self? The mind becomes peaceful and wisdom arises. Then, after a period alone, then you maybe come back to the Kruba Ajahn and seek help and seek guidance and go off again. But whether you're alone or whether you're in the community, never abandon or never give up the attention to the core. Be very careful and be very restrained in all your daily life. One advantage of living together is that we can admonish each other, we can give each other reflections and so help each other. But when you are alone, you can't do this. So when you're living alone, you have to be doubly careful. You have no one to rely on. What you have to do is keep making the mind more and more peaceful and see that the body is simply the body, that these elements are simply elements, that it's all impermanent suffering and no self. Keep penetrating this. You can separate the mind out from this attachment to this body. You see very clearly, there really is no self. How could there be one? And the mind slowly gathers internally. Problems and doubts will fade away. The Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, it's actually right here in our hearts, right up close. We have enough faith to ordain. We've seen the danger already in samsara. And what we have to understand is we're walking the path of Buddha, the path of enlightenment, the path of awakening. All the time when we're doing morning chanting, bindabat, eating, going about our daily life, we have Buddha, awakening, right up here, close to our heart. So this has been a nice opportunity. Ajahn Dhamma has invited me to visit all of you and spend some time here having a Dhamma sharing. These days we have lots of the teachings of Luang Por Chah. We've got all kinds of tapes and books. But don't think that the wisdom that's contained in those things, in those books or in those tapes, will arise very easily in your own minds. Not by reading them or listening to them. It's only through real practice. We will only realize the fruits if we are really determined, if we've made our hearts very firmly set on the path of practice. And if we have, then we will one day really experience for ourselves the true teachings, or the true liberation. We will attain that peace of mind, and we will understand the Dhamma. So today may all of you receive the fruits of your practice and slowly grow in the Dhamma.